Hello, and welcome to our webcast for March 23, 2018. My name is Christian Debré, and this is Amy Asbrook, Director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
And also joining us, Taylor Hyatt, our policy analysis and outreach coordinator. This girl over there.
Right.
Okay. And Toujours Vivant Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to disability right opposition to assisted suicide and euthanasia and other end-of-life practices that discriminates against people with disabilities. Today's topics, only one: disability and the opioid crisis. You will see there is some very interesting thing in it.
Yeah. Okay, so this week we are talking about the opioid crisis and its impact on people with disabilities. For many people, the first picture that comes to mind when hearing the term opioid crisis is a person who, addicted to doctor-prescribed pain medication, dies of an overdose of that medication. That's sort of what they're claiming is the problem. And obviously, a lot of people with disabilities are affected because people with a lot of disabilities come with pain, and folks with disabilities use opioids to deal with that pain. The current opioid crisis is just the latest go-round of the repeating cycle of anti-drug hysteria that has marked drug policy in North America for a century. Earlier cycles focused on alcohol, prohibition in the 20s, marijuana, which had a go-round in the 30s and then in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, cocaine, which had its big heyday in the 80s and 90s, with Just Say No.
Yeah.
Psychedelics, which were big at the end of the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah, LSD.
Right.
That's it.
And of course, opioids. Some features of the anti-drug hysteria cycle are exaggerating the number of addicts. So, and this is especially government agencies who who use the media to inflate the number of addicts.
Yeah, and they do it.
So that story from the CDC might be true then?
Hard to know. Hard to know. Again, it's, that's...
Anyway, they count everybody, even people who have just smoked one split in their life.
Right. Well, it wasn't about marijuana. It was about opium.
Yeah, opium is the same thing. Somebody who have touched it one time is counted as an addict.
Yeah, sometimes they do that. Yeah. Another part of the cycle is prohibition measures are increased, and that causes drug prices to rise, and people commit crimes to get more money to buy drugs. And also, that causes drugs to be mixed with other substances, and new drugs are developed, resulting in more dangerous compounds and more deaths. So if drugs become less available because of prohibition or interdiction, then when you've got a certain amount you want to distribute, you will cut the drug with some substance, anything, baby powder.
And now
sugar.
This is the fentanyl crisis, because fentanyl is a drug and it's very cheap to do.
Right. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, and people are using that, getting a hold of that and then mixing it with other things and
cheap
selling
and easy
reselling it. Yeah. Okay. So governments use high crime rates to justify increasing penalties for drug offenses and law enforcement budgets.
What's happening today in USA and Canada?
Right. Instead of providing addiction treatment services. So they're taking one direction rather than going in another direction that would actually
Just
solve
remember
the problem.
what is the opposition about the safe place to inject and things like that. It's kind of impossible to open. We have only few in Canada.
Right.
And in states, it's almost impossible to have.
Right. Safe injection sites are a public health idea, which really makes a lot of sense because it diminishes the harm associated with using drugs.
It's just one way to help.
Right. Right. But it's very hard to get law enforcement to go along, to get communities to go along with that because they say, oh, there's going to be too many drug addicts.
Punishing, it's easy.
Right.
Giving service is hard.
Right, exactly. Let's see. And poor people and people of color bear the brunt of criminal penalties, social and economic hardships. It really hits the poor communities harder. For example, when in the 90s, when the United States made mandatory minimum penalties for different drugs, for crack cocaine, which was more cheaper and used more in the communities of color, the penalties were much higher than for powder cocaine, regardless of the fact that it was
which
the same
is the
drug.
dog of doctors and rich people.
Right, exactly. Scare publicity, drug prevention slogans, urban legends, and exaggerated claims of risk draws attention to the targeted drug rather than warning people away, thus making the drug more popular. And I remember being a kid and watching Dragnet on television and all the, portraying people who were freaked out on various drugs. And it scared me because I was a little kid, but, that.
But when you're a kid,
right, when you're a teenager.
If it's forbidden, what do you do?
Right.
What do you think?
Right, exactly.
Oh, I may try it. It's may be interesting. It may be fun.
Right.
And my parent doesn't want me to do that, so I will.
Right. Exactly. They draw attention to the drug rather than warning people away, and it makes the drug more popular. And you would think that they would figure this out, but no, they don't. Okay, law enforcement and organized crime benefit from increased funding and higher profits.
So police want to fight crimes.
Right. Yeah, and they get more money to do it.
More money to do it, more salary, more everything, more equipment.
Right, exactly. More toys for the boys.
Yeah.
And
even to tanks and things like that in the USA.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable, but it's the reality.
Yeah, and the other thing is that you would think that they would learn that this promotes organized crime, but for some reason they don't.
And even if you decriminalize something, doesn't mean that you give access to it.
Right.
This is not the same thing at all.
Right. Eventually, someone figures out or remembers that these policies have never worked and cause more problems than they solve. The publicity is toned down, and the severe drug laws may or may not be repealed.
May not.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just forgive it.
Right. The minimum sentences and the from the 90s were never repealed. So people are still being thrown into jail for minor drug offenses.
In USA, this is the country where there is the most people in jail for the least people out.
Right, exactly. A 2017 news release from U.S. Senators John McCain and Kirsten Gillibrand claimed that addiction often begins with drugs given after a broken bone or wisdom tooth extraction.
Which is completely
ridiculous.
The urban legend thing again. Oh,
you go to the dentist and you became addict. Dentist and you are addict. Right? No, that's not the way it is.
Right.
And you doesn't wake up in the morning and say, I want to become an addict this morning.
Right. However, this claim gets the most important facts wrong. First, the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, also known as SAMHSA, said that only 22% of misused pain relievers were accessed through doctors in 2013 and 2014. About half were pills shared by friends or relatives, while the rest were stolen, purchased through a dealer, or obtained using multiple prescriptions.
And why? Mostly because the people who take it want to be relieved from pain, and nobody take care of it. So they turn to a family member, and the family member say, "Oh, I have some few pills of oxycodone stay in my drawers." Sometimes they are very old and powdery, and they are kind of drug when they are powdery.
Right, when they're not.
Pills are not
pills,
dangerous,
yeah.
but and even they doesn't know the prescription that they need.
Right.
They maybe sometimes they take a lot more than they need.
Right, exactly. And when doctors, prescribe acetaminophen or Tylenol or aspirin for major pain, that discourages people.
Take Tylenol. I have a broken bone and take Tylenol. Yeah,
Right.
it helps.
Yeah. So the second problem with that scenario is that the lethal substance is rarely the prescribed painkiller, like Vicodin, which contains hydrocodone, or Percocet, which contains oxycodone. It's actually a deadly cocktail that contains strong medications like fentanyl used off prescription with illegal drugs like heroin. So, that's the combination, those two drugs, that has caused the most problems.
Yeah, fentanyl now is a big problem because
Right.
it's cheap to make and very readily available everywhere.
Right, and people are getting fentanyl patches and licking them, which is not the way.
It's very, very dangerous because the drug is very powerful, and the quantity needed to be relieved is very, 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 very precise. If you do over, you are in danger to stop breathing.
Right. So this combination of drugs was found in 2/3 of opioid-related deaths in 2016, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. U.S. officials also believe that counterfeit, mislabeled, and remanufactured drugs containing fentanyl are being sold as mild pain relievers and anti-anxiety medications.
Not true.
Yeah,
Probably not.
we don't know.
We don't know, but
we don't know if this is yet another urban legend. Don't buy things on the internet.
Even if it's possible to happen, it must be in a very, very small quantity, because the number of prescribed medication who are stayed after somebody take it is very, very tiny.
Right.
So very difficult to assemble and make another drug with it. It's
right.
Very, very, very.
And the other thing to keep in mind is, at the same time as a lot of people may be dying from opium-related problems, there's still a lot of people dying from alcohol-related problems, and it's perfectly legal.
In this text, we are not saying that there's no problem. We're saying that it's not more problem than alcohol, and alcohol is kind of managed, and we have to manage the other one.
Right, exactly. Addiction rates are also much lower than some sensationalist news reports would have us believe. A 2016 study conducted by SAMHSA found that of the 87.1 million Americans who used prescribed opiates that year, only 1.6 million, or 2%, developed any kind of opioid-related disorder. A review of medical studies from the Cochrane Library database showed that long-term high-dose opioid use to treat pain related to neurological, musculoskeletal, or inflammatory conditions resulted in addiction rates of less than 1%.
I'm somebody who take it, and I'm not an addict at all.
Right. That doesn't mean that people who take those medications won't have withdrawal symptoms.
Those drugs fight pain, and if you have pain, those drugs fight only pain. You're not beginning to be addict.
Right. Addiction is a disease that's separate from whether or not you're taking an addictive substance. And yes, opioids do form a physical dependence, and you do have to go through withdrawal. So, I mean, it's a lot harder if you just stop taking the medications than if you taper down.
And
But
if you do it cold, it's very painful.
right. And, you know, people have the same problem when they try to quit nicotine, which is
Exactly the same.
cigarettes.
And tobacco is a very, very addictive drug.
Right, exactly. Okay, fear of enabling addiction has led health professionals to implement a number of disturbing measures that fall mostly on the shoulders of people with disabilities. Monitoring programs at the state level prevent prescriptions from being filled at multiple pharmacies. So if you have usually go to your pharmacy, your Pharmaprix or Pharmaprix.
CVS in the USA.
Yeah, CVS in the USA. If you usually go to one, you can't go to the other one on the other side of town because they won't let you. They won't let you fill your prescription there, even though it's the same pharmacy. Staff at these pharmacies turn patients away or interrogate them about the purpose of the prescription. Why are you taking that?
Yeah.
You know, how long have you been taking this? Blah, 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 blah.
And you don't have those kind of questions when you're taking other kind of medication.
Right.
And some are very dangerous.
Right, exactly. And the thing is that, as often happens around disability, people are made to feel like they don't deserve, or they have to prove that they deserve to have benefit of, you know, taking the pain medication. They have to prove that they have the pain, which is really ridiculous.
Yeah.
We were talking about the disability tax credit and what you have the
hoops you have to jump through.
Yeah, exactly. The hoops you have to jump through to prove that you're disabled enough for the disability tax credit. So, also, doctors are afraid of being penalized for prescribing opioids beyond state guidelines. And that's an issue here in Quebec. We have recommendations for how much opium.
Doctor, you should not prescribe more than that dose of that medication.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing, because
right. That's not going to work for a guy who's 6'8" and 280 pounds. You know, sorry.
The amount of drug is not the same.
Right. Exactly.
And if you have a very painful thing, then he may need a lot more drug.
Right. Exactly. So in that case, the doctors refuse to see people who need pain medication. And these dropped patients are left to face abrupt withdrawal along with their underlying pain.
So you are feeling pain, and because you are doing a withdrawal, it's even more difficult because you are sick and feeling pain at the same time.
Yeah.
It's very, very, very difficult.
Right.
I had the flu at the same time that I have a crisis, and it's very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. For people with disabilities or illness that includes chronic pain, the use of opioids can increase independence and quality of life. Chronic pain affects every aspect of life, from mood, it has been linked to depression, to quality of sleep, to performance of everyday activities.
That's mostly what happened with me.
Right. Yeah, especially your sleep.
Sleeping, I'm very affected.
Yeah. Lack of pain relief can lead to suicidal feelings or behavior.
That's not my case.
That's not his problem. In 2015, the rate of suicide among people with chronic pain was 23 over 100,000. 23 people per 100,000, nearly twice the normal suicide rate. So
and it should not happen.
Right, exactly. This shouldn't be the case. People should be able to get the pain relief they need and not have to always be worrying about whether they're going to have pain relief. The many myths around chronic pain are born of ignorance and outdated moral ideas about the cause and effects of illness. or older ideas were that illness was a punishment from God, that it was punishment for bad things that you did in another life, that
you will make your paradox.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was your cross to bear, blah, 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 blah. These myths include chronic pain isn't that bad. You get used to it after a while.
That's not true.
Sorry.
False.
False. If you can do something one day, you should be able to do it the next day.
False. I have good days and bad days.
Nope. It seems that a lot of this stuff comes down to people not being able to be flexible in their idea of what normal was. Like the discussion I had with my friend, the columnist, the other day. Just because Stephen Hawking takes support staff on his grocery runs does not make him inspiring. That's his normal. So what?
Yeah, really,
Yeah.
Exactly. Just because he decides to actually go out shopping with his attendant, that doesn't make him inspiring. Yeah. Okay. If a person looks neat and well groomed, they can't be in much pain. I'm sorry, that's not correct. Chronic pain is all in your head.
False.
If you are being treated with painkillers, you don't feel any pain.
False.
Another myth. If you take opiates for pain, you must be an addict, or people who claim to be in pain are just addicts trying to get drugs.
False.
People who take prescription painkillers are weak or lazy.
False. I was an entrepreneur before.
Yeah. And people with chronic pain are just complainers.
When you're in pain all the time, it takes more energy to do normal things. I don't know how they get weakness out of that.
Yeah.
And you're getting tired at very much faster.
Yeah.
And if for any reason that pain stops, you just fall asleep.
Yeah. 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 And that's one way I know that Christian's medication is working. He falls asleep.
Yeah.
So
When I feel safe and I don't feel too much pain, I fall asleep because I'm in a lack of sleep almost anytime.
Right. Most of these myths are attempts to deny that chronic pain exists. What most people don't understand or don't want to understand is that having severe pain every day wears a person down. As well, dealing with a medical system that operates based on these myths makes getting pain relief much more difficult. Finally, addiction is seen as so terrible that society is willing to let people suffer rather than using their pain.
Or die.
Or die. And, it seemed like death is better than allowing people to maybe be addicted to drugs. That's
a 92-year-old boy or man, and he's dying with suffering, and sometimes they say, oh no, he may become an addict if we give more medication.
Right.
Hey, he's dying.
Right, exactly.
And I heard it in an hospital.
Yeah. So until about a century ago, many middle-class and professional people carried on ordinary lives while being dependent on opium, morphine, or other opiate drugs. While it was affordable and easy to obtain, opium did not pose any problems to society greater than did alcohol. Death from heroin overdose was unheard of, even though many people used large amounts on a daily basis. And this background comes from a Consumer Union report on illicit and illicit drugs that was written in the early 1970s. So there is a periodically, as part of this cycle, somebody remembers, oh yeah, these policies don't work. Well, this book was a good example of explaining how the policies don't work.
And be aware, it doesn't say it doesn't give people problem or
Right.
shorter than life.
Right.
We say that it doesn't do more damage than alcohol.
Yeah.
So why fighting just against one?
Right.
It gives more problem than to give services to just fighting it in education, services, and things like that.
Right. A century ago, there was no black market. Opium was taxed and regulated, and producers of patent medicine had to clearly indicate the amount of opium in their product.
Remember
labels.
Coca-Cola. Why Coca?
Yeah, it was
Cocaine.
cocaine. So, and there were lots of cough medicines that have codeine in them, and they still do.
And codeine is a form of opioid.
Yeah, it's an opiate. So, and at that time, there were a lot of things that had opium in it. So, the social problems that are now associated with drug abuse and addiction, like poverty, crime, social breakdown, are caused not by the drug, but by making it illegal. The fear of addiction should not be used to deprive people of pain relief.
I agree.
Anybody have?
Two things come to mind. It seems like the law enforcement is a catch-all for everything, be it addicts who are in need of actual help. Just throwing them in prison isn't going to change anything. And the same thing applies to people with psychiatric conditions. Just throwing them in prison isn't going to do anything.
In some ways, prison has become the only social service that is available.
Yeah.
Because other
3 meals
things
and you have a bed to sleep with a roof over your head every night.
But that's all. And in fact, you're probably going to be.
Oh,
I actually.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, if I don't have enough pain medication, pain is so hard.
Right.
I may be thinking about dying.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But as far as my pain is in control, I'm doing a reasonable life, and I like my life.
Yeah. And again, that thing about we're so afraid of addiction that we would rather people die, have assisted suicide than addiction. That's really screwy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you want more information about our topics that we discuss, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet, all one word. Visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Taylor for helping out, and to Christian as well.
Thank you, Amy.
And thanks to you for being there. We will see you next time.
See you. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.